All right, everybody settle in. Today is one of the most important classes in this entire course, and I don't say that to hype it up. I say it because today is the day we stop talking about what a project costs and start talking about what a contractor charges. Those are two different numbers, and the distance between them is where construction companies live or die. Everything we've done so far, the quantities, the pricing, the labor, the equipment, all of that answers one question. What does it cost me to physically build this thing? Today we answer the second question, what number goes on the bid form? And I'll tell you right now, the gap between those two numbers is not just profit. It's overhead, two different kinds of overhead. It's contingency, it's profit, and it's bonds and insurance, all stacked in a specific order. Get the order wrong, or get the math wrong, and you can lose money on a job you thought was a winner. The subtitle on this slide is not a joke. The markup versus margin trap costs contractors real money. Real companies, run by smart people, have shorted themselves tens of thousands of dollars per job because they multiplied when they should have divided. By the end of today, you will never make that mistake because I'm going to burn it into your brain. Quick housekeeping before we dig in. Your daily quiz on Class 5 material, labor, and equipment pricing happens right now. So if you haven't submitted it, do it in the next few minutes. Assignment 5 was due before class. If you had trouble with the crew rate buildup, come see me in office hours, because today's assignment builds directly on it. And Assignment 6 drops today. I'll walk you through it in detail at the end of class, and it's a big one, so don't skip out early. Look at this pyramid, because this slide is the map for the whole day. At the bottom, the foundation, the biggest block, is direct cost. That's everything we've built in classes 3, 4, and 5, material, labor, equipment, and subcontractor quotes. On typical commercial work, direct costs run about 75 to 85% of the total bid. Quiz alert, direct costs are typically 75 to 85% of the bid on commercial work. Know that range. Now stack the layers on top, in order, from the bottom up. First layer above direct cost, project overhead, also called general conditions. That's the cost of running this specific job. Second layer, home office overhead, which the accountants call G&A, general and administrative. That's the cost of your company existing at all. Third layer, contingency, money for the things you know are going to bite you but can't point it yet. Fourth layer, profit, the only layer that's actually a decision instead of a cost. And the whole stack together, top to bottom, equals the bid. Here's the thing I want you to internalize about this picture. Every single layer above direct cost gets applied on your Excel summary sheet. You will never find a line item in Division 3 concrete that says home office overhead. These layers ride on top of the takeoff. They get applied as percentages or lump sums on the summary tab. That's why the summary sheet is where estimates are won and lost. Two estimators can produce nearly identical direct costs and be 5% apart on bid day, and the whole difference lives in this stack. Think about the size relationship for a second. If direct cost is 80% of the bid, then everything we talk about today, all of it combined, is roughly 20%. But here's the kicker. Your profit might be 3% of that. So a small mistake in how you handle the other 17 points doesn't dent your profit. It can erase it. A 1% error in overhead recovery on a company doing $20 million a year is $200,000. That's real money. That's somebody's salary. That's the margin between a good year and layoffs. So here's the roadmap for today. We're going to walk up the stack one layer at a time. General conditions, then G&A, then contingency, then profit. Then we hit the single most dangerous piece of arithmetic in this business, markup versus margin. Then we assemble the whole bid in order, deal with bonds, talk a little bid strategy, and work a full problem together, start to finish, exactly the way Assignment 6 will ask you to do it. Let's go. Layer 1, project overhead, and in the spec book world, this lives in Division 01, general requirements. Most of the industry just says general conditions or GCs, and I'll use those terms interchangeably today. Here's the definition I want you to write down. Project overhead is the cost of running this job that doesn't belong to any specific work item. It's not concrete. It's not steel. It's not drywall. You can't point at a wall and say, there's my general conditions. But walk any active job site, and you're looking at it everywhere. Let's walk the categories on the slide, because these are exactly the kinds of line items you'll be building in Assignment 6. First, supervision. Your superintendent, your project engineer, any field office staff. This is usually the single biggest general conditions cost on a commercial job. That super is on the payroll whether the crews pour 100 yards that day or sit through a rain delay. Second, temporary facilities. The job trailer, temporary power, temporary water, sanitation, the porta-johns. Nobody thinks about porta-johns until you forget to carry them on a 14-month job and eat the cost yourself. Third, site services. Dumpsters and trash hauling, site security, temporary fencing, project signage. Dumpsters on a big commercial job are not a rounding error. Trash hauling on a busy site can run thousands a month. Fourth, equipment and logistics that serve the whole job. Pickup trucks, fuel, small tools, and consumables. Not the crane that sets the steel, that got priced with the steel in Class 5. This is the stuff that serves everybody. Fifth, insurance, permits, and fees carried at the job level. Builder's risk insurance, the building permit, utility connection fees. And sixth, cleanup and closeout, final clean, punch list labor, commissioning support. Rookie estimators forget closeout constantly because it happens at the end, when the excitement is long gone and the money is nearly spent. Now, how do we put a number on all this? Two ways, and the slide shows both. The right way, the way you'll do it on real hard bids, is to itemize it. Build a Division 01 sheet, line by line. Superintendent, so many months at so much per month. Trailer, so many months at so much per month. Dumpsters, permits, final clean, each one estimated like its own little job. This is exactly what Assignment 6 asks you to do. The shortcut, which is legitimate for conceptual estimating only, is a percentage, typically 5 to 10% of direct cost. When an owner calls and says, roughly what is a 30,000-foot tilt wall office run? You're not building a DID01 sheet for that phone call. You carry 7 or 8% and move on. But hear me clearly, a percentage on a hard bid is malpractice. Every job's general conditions are different, and the percentage hides the thing that actually drives them. Quiz alert. 2 methods for general conditions. Itemized Division 01, detailed bids, versus a percentage of direct cost, typically 5 to 10%, conceptual estimates only. And what actually drives them? Here's the CM math moment on the slide, and this is the concept I most want you to walk out of here with. General conditions are time-driven, not quantity-driven. Most of your direct costs scale with quantities, twice the concrete cost. But your superintendent doesn't cost you by the yard. He costs you by the month. Run the slide's numbers with me. Superintendent at $12,000 a month, fully burdened. 10-month schedule. 10 times 12 is $120,000. Now the job slips to 12 months. Weather, owner changes, a slow inspector, doesn't matter why. 12 times 12 is $144,000. That schedule slip just cost you $24,000 on one line item. And the trailer, the fence, the dumpsters, the porta-johns, and the temp power all slipped right along with him. Quiz alert. Superintendent at $12,000 per month. 10-month job equals $120,000. Slips to 12 months equals $144,000. General conditions scale with duration, not quantity. If they give you a monthly rate and a duration on the quiz, multiply them. And know that a schedule slip inflates GCs even when quantities don't change. This is why estimators and schedulers have to talk to each other. You cannot price Division 01 without a defensible project duration. And it's why, when a project manager buys 2 months of schedule compression, that has real dollar value. It's not just bragging rights. It's $100+ grand of general conditions walking back into the fee. One more field note before we move up a layer. When you're a young PE and the office asks you to true up the GCs mid-project, what they're really asking is, are we going to finish on the duration we bid? If the answer is no, somebody needs to know now. because every month of slip is burning that 12 grand whether the owner pays for it or not. That conversation, held early, is worth more to a contractor than almost anything else a project engineer does. Layer 2. Project overhead was the cost of running the job. Home office overhead, G&A, general and administrative, is the cost of your company existing. What's in it? Office rent. The estimator's salaries. Yes, you, future estimators. You are overhead, and don't let anybody make you feel bad about it, because nothing gets built without you. Accounting, marketing, and business development. IT, the software licenses alone will shock you. Estimating software, project management platforms, accounting systems, they add up to serious money. And the owner's salary. Here's the defining characteristic, and this is the line on the slide I want underlined. These costs exist whether you win the job or not. The rent is due whether you're busy or slow. The estimator gets paid for the bids you lose, too. So every job you do win has to carry a piece of the load. If it doesn't, the company bleeds, slowly, invisibly, until one day the bank account explains it to you. So how does a job carry its share? Simple allocation, and here's the CM math. Take your annual G and a cost, divide by your annual revenue, and that's your G and a rate. The slide's example. A general contractor spends $1.2 million a year on home office, salaries, rent, everything. They do $20 million a year in revenue. 1.2 divided by 20 is 6%. So this contractor applies 6% G and A to every single bid. Win the job at that number, and the job pays its share of the light bill back home. Quiz alert. G and a rate equals annual G and a cost divided by annual revenue. Example, $1.2 million divided by $20 million equals 6%. If the quiz gives you those two numbers, that's the operation. Now here's the takeoff call out on the slide, and it echoes what I said earlier. G and a never appears in the takeoff. You will never measure it, count it, or find it on the drawings. It rides in the markup applied on the summary sheet, which means it is invisible to a lazy estimator. And invisible costs are the ones that kill you. Let me make that danger concrete. Say our 6% contractor gets hungry. Work is slow. They want to win something. So they bid a job carrying only 2% G and A just this once. They win it. Of course they do. They're 4 points cheap. The job runs perfectly, hits its direct costs, hits its GCs. And the company still lost ground because that job only paid a third of its share of the home office bill. Do that across a year of work, and you've got a company with a full backlog and an empty bank account. Contractors don't usually go broke on one bad job. They go broke winning a bunch of jobs that each looked fine and none of which carried the overhead. That's the slow bleed the slide is talking about. Now, typical ranges, because these are worth memorizing. General contractors, 2 to 8%. Specialty contractors and subs, often higher, 10% or more. Why the difference? Think about the revenue base. A GC pushing $80 million through the books can spread their home office thin across huge contract values. Remember, most of a GC's revenue is really subcontractor money passing through. A mechanical sub doing $8 million with their own estimators, their own shop, their own fleet coordinator has a much smaller base to spread it over. Smaller denominator, bigger percentage. Same math we just did. Quiz alert. Typical G and A, general contractors 2 to 8%. Specialty subs often 10% plus. And the definitional distinction. Project overhead is job specific. Home office overhead, G and A, is company-wide and exists win or lose. Expect a question that makes you tell those two apart. Quick self-check before we move on, because the quiz loves this distinction. The superintendent's salary, which bucket? Project overhead. He's dedicated to the job. The estimator's salary? G and A. She works on 10 bids a month. You can't pin her to one job. The job trailer? Project overhead. The office rent in town? G and A. If you can sort any cost I throw at you into direct cost, project overhead, or G and A, you own this material. Layer 3. Contingency. This is the most misunderstood line on the summary sheet. So let's define it tight. Contingency is money you carry for known unknowns. Things you know from experience will happen on this job, but can't identify or measure yet. Design gaps. Details the architect hasn't drawn, but somebody will have to build. Quantity growth. The takeoff always grows a little as the design firms up. Coordination issues. The duct that fights the beam that fights the sprinkler main. Now, two things contingency is not, and the slide is emphatic about both. Contingency is not for scope changes. If the owner adds a wing to the building, that is a change order. New scope, new money, new time. You don't eat that out of contingency, and if you let an owner train you to, you'll run out of contingency by the second month. And contingency is not hidden profit. It's real money you genuinely expect to spend on real problems. You just can't name them yet. An estimator who treats contingency as a profit stash will get it stripped in the first bid review. An estimator who treats it honestly can defend every point of it. Quiz alert. Contingency covers known unknowns. It is not for owner scope changes. That's change orders. And it is not profit. That distinction is prime quiz material. So how much do you carry? The answer is a sliding scale driven by one variable: design completeness. The less complete the drawings, the more unknowns, the more contingency. The slide gives the industry standard ladder, and I want these ranges in your notes. Conceptual or schematic design, 10 to 20%. You're pricing a napkin sketch. There's a lot you can't see. Design development, 5 to 10%. The building has taken shape, but the details are still soft. Construction documents, 3 to 5%. Nearly complete drawings, but every set has holes. Bid documents, a full, coordinated, permitted set, 0 to 3%. Quiz alert. The contingency ladder, conceptual/SD 10 to 20%, DD 5 to 10%, CD 3 to 5%, bid documents 0 to 3%. Contingency goes down as design completeness goes up. If a quiz question says the project is at design development, what contingency range is appropriate? You now know the answer, 5 to 10%. The slide also draws a line between owner's contingency and contractor's contingency, and this trips people up. The owner carries their own contingency in their project budget for their changes, their scope creep, their program adjustments. That's their money, sitting outside your contract. The contractor's contingency is inside your estimate, covering your estimating uncertainty. Two different pots, two different owners, two different purposes. On a CM at-risk job, you'll often see both spelled out explicitly in the contract. On hard bid work, the owner's pot is invisible to you, which brings up the estimator's rule printed on this slide, and it's worth saying out loud. Contingency covers estimating uncertainty, not bad luck. If a hurricane hits the site, contingency doesn't fix that. That's what insurance and force majeure clauses are for. Contingency covers the gap between what the documents show and what the building will actually require. One last piece of field reality. On hard bid work with full construction documents, you'll often see no visible contingency line at all. Competition squeezed it out. Does that mean the risk went away? No. It means it got buried. A little padding in the unit prices, a conservative production rate here and there, or it means the contractor is genuinely betting their profit as the contingency. On a 3% profit hard bid with zero contingency, one bad surprise, and the profit is the contingency. That's the tightrope hard bid GCs walk every day, and it's exactly why the rest of today's math has to be precise. When your cushion is 3 points, you cannot afford to give one of them away through sloppy arithmetic. Layer 4, profit. And here's the headline on the slide. Profit is a decision, not a formula. Everything else we've priced today is a cost. The superintendent costs what he costs. The office rent is the rent. But profit? Profit is a strategic choice you make on bid day, looking at the market, and two identical contractors can rationally choose different numbers for the same job. What drives that decision? The slide lists the big five, and every one of them shows up in real bid room conversations. Backlog. How much work do you already have? If your crews and supers are booked for the next 14 months, you don't need this job, so you price it fat. If you win it anyway, great, it's a profitable job. If the backlog's empty and payroll is looming, you sharpen the pencil. There's an old saying, busy contractors bid high, hungry contractors bid thin. Both can be right. Competition. How many bidders are on the list? 3 bidders. You've got a real shot at a healthy number. 9 bidders. Somebody in that room is going to do something desperate, and you have to decide if you want to chase them. Risk. A straightforward tilt-wall warehouse for a repeat client is not the same animal as a downtown renovation with an occupied building, unknown existing conditions, and a liquidated damages clause. Riskier job, more profit required to justify playing. Relationship with the owner. Repeat clients, negotiated work, owners who pay on time and don't weaponize the punch list. That's worth real money, and contractors will trim margin to keep those relationships. And the market cycle overall. In a boom, everybody's fat. In a downturn, you'll see contractors bidding at break-even just to keep crews together, covering overhead with zero profit, because losing your workforce costs more than a zero profit year. Now the typical numbers, and these matter for the quiz. Commercial general contractors on hard bid work, 2 to 5% profit. Subcontractors, 10 to 15% or more. Quiz alert. Typical hard bid profit. Commercial GCs 2 to 5%. Subs 10, 15% plus. And know why the gap exists. Why do subs carry triple the GC's margin? Same logic as G and A. The GC's number rides on a huge contract value that's mostly subcontractor money passing through. 3% of 20 million is real money for managing risk and flow. The sub is marking up their own labor and material, self-performed, with all the productivity risk that carries. A sub at 3% would be out of business the first time a crew had a bad month. One vocabulary note: the slide flags, because you'll hear it constantly in CM at-risk world. The word fee. On a CM at-risk contract, the fee typically means overhead plus profit bundled into one negotiated percentage. So when a CM says, we'll do it for a 4% fee, that 4 points is covering their home office and their profit together, which tells you how thin CM at-risk fees really run. On hard bid work, we keep the layers separate, which is exactly what your summary sheet does. Quiz alert. In CM at-risk, fee equals overhead plus profit combined. Don't confuse fee with pure profit. Think per share. 3 minutes, quick one before the big slide. Turn to the person next to you and settle this scenario in 2 minutes. Your company has 14 months of backlog. The bid list for a new project shows 9 general contractors, and the job is a renovation of an occupied hospital wing. Backlog says bid high. 9 bidders says the winner will be thin. The risk profile says you'd better be paid for it. Where does your profit number land? And which factor wins? All right, phones down, pencils up. This slide is the reason today's class exists. It is guaranteed quiz material. It will be on the weekly test. It will be on the final. And, far more important, it will follow you into every estimating job you ever hold. Markup versus margin. Here are the definitions. Clean. Markup is a percentage added on cost. 10% markup means take the cost, multiply by 1.10. The reference point is the cost. Margin is a percentage of price. 10% margin means when the dust settles, profit divided by the final price equals 10%. The reference point is the price, the bid, the contract value. Same words in casual conversation. Completely different math. Watch what happens. Cost is $1 million. Apply a 10% markup. 1 million times 1.1 equals 1,100,000. Price is $1,100,000, and there's $100,000 of profit sitting in it. Feels like 10%, right? Now check the margin on that deal. Margin is profit over price. 100,000 divided by 1,100,000. That's 9.09%. Not 10. You marked up 10 and you're holding 909. Quiz alert. A 10% markup on $1 million gives a $1,100,000 price and only a 9.09% margin. Markup percentage is always bigger sounding than the margin it produces. Know the 9.09 number. So how do you actually get a 10% margin? Here's the CM math. And if you memorize one formula from this entire course, make it this one. Price equals cost divided by 1 minus margin. You want 10% margin on $1 million cost? 1 million divided by 0.90. 1,111,111. $1,111,111. Check it. Profit is $111,111. Divide by the price of $1,111,111. Exactly 10%. Divide, don't multiply. Quiz alert. Price equals cost divided by 1 minus margin. For 10% margin on $1 million. $1 million divided by 0.90 equals $1,111,111. This formula will be on the quiz. Divide by 1 minus the margin. Do not multiply by 1 plus it. Now let's talk about the trap on the slide, because this is where it stops being algebra and starts being money. A contractor sits down at the bid table. The boss says, I want 10 points on this one, meaning margin. The boss thinks in margin because margin is what shows up on the financial statements. The estimator, in a hurry, multiplies cost by 1.1. The bid goes out. They win. Where's the damage? The correct price was $1,111,111. The bid went out at $1,100,000. The estimator shorted the company $11,111 on one job per $1 million of cost. Nobody notices because the job still shows a profit. But run that error across a company doing $30 million a year in cost, and that little rounding thing is over $300,000 of profit that walked out the door, silently. On jobs, everybody celebrated winning. That's the markup versus margin trap. It never announces itself. It just quietly makes you poorer than your own financial plan says you should be. Quiz alert. The trap, multiplying by 1 plus margin, instead of dividing by 1 minus margin, shorts you about $11,000 per million at a 10% target. Expect a quiz question giving you a cost and a target margin. Read the word carefully, then divide. And notice, the trap gets worse as the percentage grows. At 5%, the gap is small. At 10, it's 11 grand a million. At 20%, multiplying gives you 1.20 million, where dividing gives you 1.25. A $50,000 miss per million. Subcontractors, who run bigger margins, get hurt worse by this error than GCs do. Here's the plain English way to keep it straight forever. Markup looks backward at the cost. How much did I add on top of what I spent? Margin looks forward from the price. Of every dollar the owner pays me, how many cents do I keep? The owner pays the price, not the cost. And your company's health is measured in cents per dollar collected. That's why financial statements, bonding companies, and your boss all speak margin. You need to speak both and translate without dropping money in the gap. When you read a problem, on the quiz, on the test, in real life, circle the word. If it says markup, multiply by 1 plus. If it says margin, divide by 1 minus. Every time. No exceptions. Now we assemble the machine. You've got 4 layers plus direct cost. In what order do they go on the summary sheet? And does the order even matter? Yes, enormously. Here's the stack, top of the sheet to the bottom line. Start with direct costs, everything from the takeoff and pricing sheets. Add project overhead, your itemized division 0, 1 general conditions. That gives you a subtotal, the true cost of building the job. Then apply G&A as a percentage. Then contingency. Then profit. And that's the bid, before bonds, which get their own slide in a minute. Quiz alert, summary sheet order, direct costs plus project overhead, GCs, subtotal plus G, and a plus contingency plus profit equals bid. Know the sequence cold. Expect a put these in order question. Now, why does order matter? Because percentages compound. Each percentage on the summary sheet is applied to the running total, everything below it in the stack, not to the original direct cost. Applying 6% G&A and then 5% profit is not the same as adding 11% once, because the profit rides on top of a number that already includes the G&A. Let's prove it with the slides example and follow the keystrokes. Because assignment 6 makes you build exactly this in Excel. Direct cost, $1 million. General conditions, 8%. G&A, 6%. Contingency, 3%. Profit, 5%. 1 million times 1.08 is 1,080,000. Times 1.06 is 1,144,800. Times 1.03 is 1,179,144. Times 1.05 is 1,238,101. Call it about $1,238,000. Now the lazy way. Add up the percentages. 8 plus 6 plus 3 plus 5 is 22. And slap a flat 22% on the million. That gives $1,220,000. The difference, roughly $18,000. Same percentages, same job, 18 grand apart, purely because of how you applied them. And which one is correct? The compounded number. Each layer legitimately earns its percentage on the full base beneath it. Your profit percentage applies to the whole cost of doing the work, including the overhead. Flat adding percentages systematically under-recovers. And on a job with 3 points of profit, an $18,000 arithmetic giveaway on a $1.2 million job is more than a full point of margin. You just donated a third of your profit to the owner without knowing it. Quiz alert. Percentages compound on the summary sheet. $1 million times 1.08 times 1.06 times 1.03 times 1.05 is almost equal to $1,238,000 versus $1,220,000 if you flat add 22%, about an $18,000 difference. Compounding beats flat adding, and compounding is correct. In Excel terms, your summary tab should be a cascade. Each row references the running subtotal above it, multiplied by 1 plus the rate. Never a stack of percentages all pointing back at the direct cost cell. When I grade assignment 6, the first thing I check is whether your formulas cascade. That structure is the whole lesson. One more wrinkle the slide flags, and it sets up the next topic. Some costs are calculated on the final number, the total that already includes all the markup. Bonds are the classic case. Certain taxes work the same way. That creates a chicken and egg problem. The bond premium depends on the bid, but the bid includes the bond premium. There are two ways out. Iterate until it converges, or use the divide trick you already learned for margin. Hold that thought. Last layer, sitting on the very top of the stack, bonds and contract-level insurance. Quick refresher on what a bond is, for those who haven't hit it in another course. On most public work, and plenty of private work, the owner requires payment and performance bonds. A surety company guarantees that you'll finish the job and pay your subs and suppliers. If you default, the surety steps in. For that guarantee, you pay a premium. Here's the critical mechanical fact. The bond premium is priced on the final contract value, the whole bid, markup, and all. Not on cost, not on the subtotal, on the number at the bottom of the page. Typical premiums run about 0.5% to 1.5%, and they work on a sliding scale. The rate steps down in tiers as the contract value goes up. First few $100,000 at the highest rate, the next tier a little cheaper, and so on. Big jobs bond cheaper per dollar than small ones. Quiz alert. Payment and performance bonds are priced on final contract value, typically 0.5, 1.5%, on a sliding scale that decreases as contract value increases. And now the math problem I teased. The bond depends on the final price, but the final price includes the bond. Circular reference. Excel will literally throw the error at you if you wire it up naively. 2 escapes. Option 1. Iterate. Compute the bond on your pre-bond total, add it, recompute on the new total, add the difference, and after a couple of passes it converges. Works, but it's clunky. Option 2, the clean way, and it should look very familiar, divide. Total bid equals the pre-bond subtotal divided by 1 minus the bond rate. Quiz alert. Bond math uses the divide method. Total equals subtotal divided by 1 minus bond rate. Same structure as the margin formula. 2 things in this class use divide by 1 minus, target margin, and bond on final value. See what happened there? The exact same algebra as margin. Anytime a percentage is defined against the final number instead of the base, you divide by 1 minus the rate. Margin is a percent of price, divide. Bond is a percent of final contract value, divide. That's not two formulas to memorize. It's one idea wearing two hats. Is it worth the fuss for a fraction of a percent? Run it. On a $5 million bid at a blended 1%, the bond is $50,000. Forget it entirely, and you eat 50 grand. Compute it on cost instead of final value, and you're short a few thousand, which, again, comes straight out of a profit line that might only be 150 grand to begin with. Small percentage, big base, real dollars. Builder's risk and general liability insurance often ride as a percentage of contract value the same way. Same treatment, same divide logic if they're rated on the final number. Before we go hands-on, a few minutes of strategy, because the stack tells you what the job needs to carry, but bid day is where judgment lives. First concept, the spread, or what the industry calls money left on the table. Bids get opened. You're low at 4.2 million. Second place is 4.5. You won. Congratulations. And you also just learned you left $300,000 on the table. You could have bid 4.45, still won, and pocketed $250,000 more. Smart contractors run second bidder analysis on every bid opening they attend, win, or lose, and over time it tells them exactly how their pricing sits against each competitor in each market. If you're consistently winning by 8 or 10%, you're not a great competitor, you're underpriced. Second, know your real break-even. Break-even is direct cost plus general conditions plus G and the number at which the job pays for itself and its share of the company, with nothing left over. Everything above break-even is cushion. Everything below it is a donation to the owner. And here's the sentence on this slide that I want tattooed somewhere. You'll see it on bid day. When you cut your price, you are cutting your profit, because the costs don't care what you bid. The concrete costs what it costs whether you bid it fat or thin. The only thing your bid number changes is what's left for you. So when the boss says, knock 3% off so we win it, understand precisely what's being spent. On a 5% profit job, knocking off 3 points spends 60% of the profit. Sometimes that's the right strategic call, keeping crews busy, buying into a new market, courting a client. Fine, but make it knowingly, with the break-even number sitting in front of you. Third, the slide mentions unbalanced bidding, front-loading, and I want you to know what it is and where the line sits. On unit price work, some contractors shift money toward early pay items, mobilization, earthwork, so cash comes in faster at the front of the job. Mild front-loading for cash flow is common and owners largely expect it. But aggressively unbalancing, inflating items you think will overrun in quantity, gutting ones you think will underrun, crosses into gaming the owner. Some public agencies can and will reject a materially unbalanced bid, and it can blow up in your face when the quantities move the other way. Know the tactic, understand the cash flow logic, and keep yourself on the defensible side of it. Quiz alert, money left on the table equals the gap between the low bid and the second bidder. Break-even equals direct cost plus GCs plus G and A. And cutting the bid price cuts profit dollar for dollar, because costs don't change with the bid. All right, calculators out, and I mean everybody. We're going to take a direct cost all the way to a bid, using every single thing from today in the exact structure assignment 6 requires. I'll work it on the screen, you work it at your desk, we check each other line by line. Here's the setup. Direct cost, $842,500. Assume that's your takeoff and pricing, done and checked. General conditions, 7%. G and A, 5.5%. Contingency, 3%. Target profit, 6%. And read the slide carefully. That's a 6% margin, not markup. Bond, 0.85% on the final contract value. Before anybody touches a key, scan the problem and sort the percentages. Which ones multiply and which ones divide? GCs, G and A, contingency. Those are markups on cost as we cascade up, multiply. Margin, percent of price, divide. Bond, percent of final value, divide. 3 multiplies, 2 divides. Now we go. Step 1, general conditions. 842,500 times 1.07. That's $901,475. On a real bid, this line would be your itemized DEV01 total, but the percentage stands in for it today. Step 2, G and A. 901,475 times 1.055. Note, applied to the running subtotal, not back to the 842. That's $951,056. Step 3, contingency. 951,056 times 1.03. $979,588. Stop and look at that number. 979.5 is your break-even plus contingency, the job covering itself, its share of the office, and its expected unknowns. Every dollar above this line is yours. Every dollar below, it came out of your hide. Step 4, profit. And here's where half of real-world estimators blow it. 6% margin. Do not type times 1.06. Divide by 1 minus 0.06. 979,588 divided by 0.94 equals $1,042,115. Check the temptation math. Multiplying by 1.06 would have given $1,038,363, about $3,700 lighter. That's the trap. Live in a single keystroke. Step 5, bond. 0.85% on final value. Divide again. 1,042,115 divided by 0.9915 equals $1,051,051. That's the bid. $1,051,051. Quiz alert. The worked problem chain. $842,500 times 1.07 equals $901,475 times 1.055 equals $951,056 times 1.03 equals $979,588 divided by 0.94 equals $1,042,115. Divided by 0.9915 is almost equal to $1,051,051. Multiply for cost-based percentages. Divide for margin and bond. If your quiz answer came from times 1.06 on the profit step, it's wrong. Sanity check the whole thing, the way you always should before a number leaves your desk. Bid of $1,051,051 against direct cost of $842,500. Total markup is about 24.8% over direct. For a hard bid commercial job carrying a full GC load, G&A, contingency, margin, and bond, that's a reasonable neighborhood. If you'd ended up at 15% or at 40%, that's your cue to hunt for the mistake before bid day, not after. Always know what reasonable looks like, so a wrong answer feels wrong. And notice what the divide steps did to the shape of the number. The last 2 steps added about $71,500 on top of the $979 subtotal, roughly $62,500 of it your profit, about $8,900 the surety's premium. Now backcheck the margin, because this is how you verify a margin calculation every single time. Profit of $62,527 divided by the pre-bond price of $1,042,115, exactly 6%. Target hit, on the nose. If that division doesn't return your target margin, you multiplied somewhere you should have divided. 10 seconds of checking, and the trap can never get you. Still slide 12, problem B. On your own, now you do one solo, and I'm going to walk the room. Write this down. Direct cost $1,240,000. General conditions 8%. G and A 4.5%. Contingency 4%. The documents are a little rougher on this one. Target margin 5%. Bond 0.75% on final value. Same structure, your keystrokes. 5 minutes. When you have a bid, write it big at the top of your page. All right, check it as a room. GCs. 1,240,000 times 1.08 is 1,339,200. G and A times 1.045 is 1,399,464. Contingency times 1.04 is 1,455,443. Profit, who divided? 1,455,443 divided by 0.95 is 1,532,045. Bond, divided by 0.9925 gives 1,543,623. Call it $1,543,623. If you got 1,528,215 on the profit step, you multiplied by 1.05. That's the trap, and better to meet it here than on a bid form. If your bond landed around 1,466,000, you bonded before you took profit. Back to the stack order. Everybody within a few dollars of 1.544 million. That's a correct bid, built the professional way, and you just did in 5 minutes what assignment 6 asked you to do with real line items. Optional discussion beat if time allows. Ask the room. Our margin on problem B is 5%, about $76,600 of profit. The boss says cut 2 points to win it. In dollars, what did we just spend? Answer. Dropping to a 3% margin cuts the bid to about $1,512,000 pre-bond terms. Roughly $31,600 of profit gone, over 40% of it. Let that number sit for a second before moving on. Do not pack up. This is the part where I save you 3 hours of confusion. Assignment 6, from direct cost to bid, is posted on Canvas right now, and it is due before our next class. Here's exactly what it is, and exactly how to not lose points on it. The setup. You're given the direct cost recap for the small commercial building. Your term project numbers, the same building you've been carrying since week 1. Direct costs are done for you for this assignment. The work is everything we did today. You're building the Excel summary sheet that takes that direct cost to a complete bid. Deliverable 1, the Excel summary tab. 1 workbook, 1 clean summary tab. And here's what has to be on it, in stack order. First, your general conditions. And this is the meat of the assignment. Do not use a flat percentage. I want an itemized division 01 section. 8 to 10 line items, each with a quantity, a unit cost, and an extension. And at least some of them must be duration driven. Superintendent at dollars per month times project months, trailer per month, dumpsters per month, temp facilities per month. That means you have to commit to a project duration and state it on the sheet. Pick something defensible for a small commercial building and be consistent. If your super is priced for 8 months, your trailer better not be priced for 12. Second, apply G and A as a percentage of the subtotal. Third, contingency, and choose your percentage based on where the term project documents sit on the design completeness ladder from today. Fourth, profit, and read the instructions carefully because it says profit as a margin. You know what that means now? Divide by 1 minus, never multiply. Fifth, bond on the final contract value. Divide method again. Bottom line, your bid. Your formulas must cascade, each layer applied to the running subtotal above it, exactly like the worked problem. If every percentage in your workbook points back at the direct cost cell, that's the compounding error from slide 8, and it will cost you points because it would cost a real company real money. Deliverable 2, the short answer memo. A few paragraphs, Word doc, or a text box on a second tab. Your call. Justifying your numbers. Why that duration? Why that contingency percentage tied to design completeness? Why that profit margin? What market conditions are you assuming? How many bidders? What's your backlog story? I'm not grading whether you picked 5% or 6%. I'm grading whether you can defend what you picked like an estimator standing in front of the boss at bid review. Write it plain. 3 tight paragraphs beat a page of filler every time. Now, the slide lists the 3 most common ways students bleed points on this one. So consider yourselves warned. Error 1. Multiplying for margin. The assignment says margin. If I open your workbook and see the profit row multiplying by 1.0 whatever, that's the trap, and you walked into it with the lights on. Error 2. Applying the bond before profit. Bond goes on last, on the final contract value. Bond premium is rated on the full contract amount, profit included. Sequence matters. Error 3. Forgetting duration-based GCs. If your Division 01 is 10 lump sums with no months anywhere, you missed the biggest idea of the day. General conditions are time-driven. Format notes. Label your rows so a stranger can follow the cascade. Format dollars as dollars, and put your name, the course, and the assignment number on the tab. Submit the workbook and the memo if it's separate to Canvas before class. If Excel gives you a circular reference error on the bond row, you wired it as a % of the total instead of using the divide formula. That error message is Excel telling you to reread slide 9. And the daily quiz. Next class opens with the Class 6 daily quiz, covering everything from today. Every quiz alert you heard is fair game. Do the assignment first. Students who build the summary sheet ace this quiz because the math is in their fingers, not just their notes. Let's land this thing. 7 takeaways. And yes, this recap is basically the quiz study guide. So pins up one last time. 1. The cost stack. Direct costs. Then project overhead. Then G&A. Then contingency. Then profit. Then bonds. That order, cascading, to the bid. 2. The two overheads are different animals. Project overhead, general conditions, belongs to the job, lives in Division 01, and is driven by duration. Home office overhead, G&A, belongs to the company, exists whether you win or lose, and gets allocated as annual G&A over annual revenue. 3. Contingency covers known unknowns tied to design completeness, 10 to 20 conceptual, down to 0 to 3 at bid documents. It is not profit, and it is not a change order fund. 4. Profit is a market decision, backlog, competition, risk, relationship, cycle. GCs run 2 to 5 on hard bids, subs 10 to 15 plus. 5. The big one. Markup multiplies, margin divides. Price equals cost divided by 1 minus the margin. Circle the word in the problem before you touch the calculator. 6. Percentages compound on the summary sheet, and bonds ride on the final contract value. Divide method, same algebra as margin. 7. Cutting price cuts profit, dollar for dollar, because the costs don't care what you bid. Know your break-even before you sharpen anything. If you can do 3 things, sort any cost into its bucket, cascade the stack in order, and pick multiply versus divide correctly every time, you can take any direct cost in the world to a defensible bid. That's not a class skill. That's a career skill, and plenty of working estimators never fully get it. You now have it. Protect it. Assignment 6 is live, due before next class. Daily quiz on today's material at the top of next class. Next time we put this behind us and get back into the takeoff itself, bring your laptops with on-screen takeoff ready to go, because we're back on the drawings. Questions? Come see me now or catch office hours. RFM 2337. Good work today. Go build a bid. End of class 6 script. Approximate total runtime. 80 to 85 minutes at lecture pace, plus student work time during the hands-on segment.